This is Criteria. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Criteria, the Catholic Film Podcast. My name's James Majewski. I'm here with my co-host, Thomas Miras. What's up, Thomas?
Hey, James.
And today we have a very special guest here to discuss Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. This is a dear, dear friend of ours, someone we've known for a very long time. We all graduated high school together, in fact. We're joined by Paul Duda. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, James. Hi, Thomas.
So Paul is, like I said, our friend, but also a filmmaker, a film producer. He owns and runs a boutique creative agency called Frank and Lou Creative. They've done some awesome work for my theater studio. We're excited to have you on finally. You've been a longtime listener of our show. We also wanted to have you on because we wanted to ask you about the projects that you're working on right now. Specifically, if I understand, you're working on a film about Saint Bernadette. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So we wrapped production on our film tentatively titled Bernadette and the Lady of Lord. We wrapped production at the end of April this year in southern France, and we're now in post-production, trying to both finish the film and also raise money to finish the film. So we're doing two parts right now, doing them at the same time, trying to get a finished cut by the end of the summer to release potentially in festivals in the fall. But then right now we're slated for a theatrical release in the U.S. next spring. So
that's awesome.
Aiming for the Feast of Our Lady of Lord, which I believe is February 11th, 2027. So
wow.
Yeah, it's been a big project. We've been working on it for 2.5 years. I helped Dan Johnson, who I met through the 8 Beats project, which Anthony D'Ambrosio, who did Triumph of the Heart, that I believe you guys had on to talk about Triumph of the Heart. He kind of headed that project up. And Dan and I met doing the 8 Beats project together, which is an anthology series about the 8 Beatitudes. And then started working together. And a couple years ago, Dan was like, "Hey, let's. I'm thinking about making a movie about Saint Bernadette." And I was like, "Really?" Because there's a lot of movies about Saint Bernadette. If you guys don't know, there's a couple TV movies, Song of Bernadette, so he then was like, "Yeah, I think she deserves a more contemporary story told," and so he gave me some homework to read some of her own writings, and reading through it, I was like, oh yeah, this is not the Saint Bernadette that I've seen depicted in a lot of those films. And so we sort of tackled the script together, structured the story, and then Dan went and wrote the script, and then we went and made it. So that's where we are right now in post-production. It's been a big project, a big journey, and I wanted to come on here and throw it out, especially to the Catholic world, because the more people know about it earlier, the better.
Right.
We tried to make a movie about a real, very obviously religious Catholic woman who really did live and was a huge deal in France, and very famous, like Beatles level famous in France. And who I think a lot of people assume is a saint because she saw Our Lady, but we all know that that's not how it works, and she's actually a saint because of how she lived her life, the rest of her life, after the visions, and through them as well. So that's really the story we wanted to tell, was about somebody who was just an incredible example her whole life. In fact, I will say, and you guys know me pretty well, I'm not exactly like the picture of Catholic perfection.
Oh man.
But Saint Bernadette has a specific quote where she said, and I didn't know this until I started the story, it's something along the lines of, "I wish we knew the defects and struggles of the saints more than their ecstasies and miracles, because that would be more help to me." And when I read that quote, I was like, oh, maybe we would have been friends, because I very much feel the same. So, she's still a saint, so she was pretty incredible. But she definitely struggled with her own things in her own way. So yeah, that was the story we tried to tell. So
That's awesome.
I really like that idea of, including some of the stuff afterwards. And I don't know that anybody. I actually haven't seen a single movie about Saint Bernadette. Although I know that there are a bunch, but I don't know if anybody's done that before. So that sounds great. And it's this is a slight tangent, but. The other year is that something you're allowed to say? A year or two ago, they published an expanded edition of the Letters of Tolkien, and some of the editions are his reactions upon seeing the Song of Bernadette. Super interesting because he's at first raving about it. It introduces him to Bernadette. He's got this devotion to her now. And then the next two letters, you can see his enthusiasm for the movie quickly waning the more he learns about her actual story.
Right.
And being this isn't accurate,
Right. Well, so it's funny that you say that because we were talking about how the Tolkien actually took some inspiration from how Bernadette lived her life after the visions with how he handled Frodo returning to the Shire. A similar sort of experiencing something that changes you to a point where you're not really meant for this world anymore, and how do you kind of how do you live through that? That's great. I'm perhaps articulating it poorly, but the the interesting thing about that too is that he saw Song of Bernadette. But Song of Bernadette is based on a book that was written by, I believe, a Jewish man who heard her story word of mouth because he moved to Lord or near Lord and heard it from the townspeople and the people around there. And so he wrote the story word of mouth.
Wow.
But what people don't realize is that Bernadette has a ton of her own writings. And in fact, you can read I think it's on EWTN. Website. It's a short story of Bernadette's life that she wrote herself. Obviously, it's translated into English, but that she wrote herself. And there's a book that I think is called. Oh man, I always get it wrong. It's something In her words or through her eyes or something
we recorded an audiobook version of that short sort of autobiographical text that you're
no way.
My Name is Bernadette. Yeah, so James's wife Karina did the audiobook for that, and it is our most viewed video on YouTube by far.
That's awesome.
It's huge, and people say that it makes them cry. I just got a comment 2 days ago why does this make me cry like a baby? Because there's something about the simplicity of it and the directness of her voice. I mean, Saint Bernadette's voice, and then Karina's voice, I think really fits it very well.
Yeah.
She did a good job. I don't have Karina on the Audiobooks podcast often, but when I do, she makes the most listened to episode.
Maybe you guys need to pull her in more frequently. I don't know if maybe you guys can't afford her. I don't know.
She's very expensive. Her time is more valuable than ours. So.
Yeah.
But no, I had a very similar experience when I read that text for the first time. I was like, oh wow, this is different than what I understood Bernadette to be. And in part, it was her voice. It was her spunk.
Right.
Yeah.
Pretty charming.
Yeah.
Well, so that was one of the things that fascinated me about her too, was that there's this portrayal of her, even in, you guys ever watched the cartoon Princess of Lord, the CCC animated cartoon?
Yeah, probably that might be the one film about her that I have seen. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've seen all of them. I don't know, the movies about her were approved on the approved watch list in the Duda household as a kid. So we had it on VHS, and it would Song of Bernadette and the CCC one. But she's always portrayed as really, really dumb, stupid, to the point of in Song of Bernadette, it's this isn't a real person. She floats around as kind of this saintly empty vessel of just oh, I'm so perfect. And that's not, this is somebody who was grew up taking care of her siblings, and then learned as an adult, as a 17, 18-year-old, how to write a different language because she didn't speak French. She spoke the local language, and then she learned how to speak French and how to write in French. And that's not somebody who's dumb. I don't think people who can't learn can do that. This is somebody who just wasn't educated because they didn't have the opportunity to be educated. And then if you read some of the actual records of her interrogation and everything, she's like street smart and sarcastic in ways that are like biting and clever and like, you know, like she's just clearly more fiery than I think the depictions of her lead you to believe, because like in Song of Bernadette, she's very much like, oh, well, don't animals. And I have a special place in my heart for this movie. I don't want to rag on somebody else's art because it was a different time, a different depiction, and it was well beloved at the time, and I still kind of love it. But she was like, oh, like, don't animals eat grass? So isn't it normal for you to? Where in reality, that's a real thing she said because they were asking her why she ate grass. When in reality, she was probably more like a sort of snarky teenager being like, yeah, animals eat grass. It's not that big of a deal, guys. Like, that's probably more what her attitude was than
interesting. Interesting.
So anyway, I think she's fascinating. And I think, I didn't think she was until I started reading about her. And honestly, it's kind of opened me up more to even more of the saints, because I think, you know, we hear stories about them and they're really cool, like miracles and things like that. But most of them, all of them were real people.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, some of them were legends though, right? Like how much about like George and the Dragon is real, and like, that's kind of what I meant. But but all of them were real people. And so they experienced real things in a way that I don't feel like maybe we get the chance to know about. Triumph of the Heart, you know, was a beautiful film. I think Anthony did great work with, and seeing kind of St. Maximilian Kolbe's story in that way was wonderful. And there's definitely been films that have done it. St. Bernadette's story is interesting because it is she's not like a martyr, and she's not she had a much quieter life, I would say, than St. Maximilian Kolbe. It wasn't sort of this I don't want to say bombastic, that's not the right term, but there wasn't this climactic end to it. Yeah. She kind of died sick and weak. So that's a lot about Bernadette, guys. I don't know how much time we have.
That's great, man. No, this is really interesting. I'd like to become one of those saints who wasn't a real person. You know, like we all are supposed to aspire for holiness, and I want to aspire for like the mists of time legend status. You know, I
would love it if
those are like the most popular saints. They're all, you know, like Saint Christopher. Come on, forget about it. Yeah. And Anthony is real, but no, he might as well not, because nobody knows who he is. They, you know, we released an audiobook of Saint Athanasius's life of Saint Anthony of the Desert, and people are like commenting in the comments saying like, oh yeah, I pray to him to like help me find my stuff. I'm like, that's not the same Anthony, guys. You don't even know who he was.
So the funny thing is, in this day and age, they're gonna have documents. They're gonna have our Facebook statuses. Right. You know,
we're gonna have the opposite problem.
And to the point where when I was I was filming at the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico last summer, and they had a framed jersey that belonged to Saint Carlo Acutis. It was like a soccer jersey, but the back of it said player.
Don't hate the game, man.
Exactly. Which I was just like, wow, yeah.
That's not the thing.
It's a real player. Don't hate the game.
Don't hate the player. Hate the game. I think it's the saying.
That's it. It's backwards.
Anyway. Yeah, well, that's awesome, man. I'm so excited for this work that you're doing.
Well, I will say, watching. So are we going to start talking about Close Encounters now?
That I was going to try to find some sort of graceful segue,
dude. So this is what's fascinating though to me, because you said, I was like Song of Bernadette because it's about Bernadette, but then you were like, nah, it's something you really want to. And I love Close Encounters. I love it. Like it was a movie my dad showed me when I was like 9 years old. He brought it home from the video store and we watched it as a family, and it scared me to death. I was terrified because of the whole abduction scene, all of that. And then you get to the end of it. But what's interesting to me is we just talked about sort of the J.R.R. Tolkien and Bernadette connection of experiencing something that kind of like makes you not like fit or long for this world in a way.
Right.
And I do actually think that watching the movie, I was like, oh, that's kind of like, it feels like almost what Spielberg is trying to approach in the script without really understanding what he's trying to get at, in terms of like the film being about somebody experiencing something they don't fully understand, and then kind of it becoming their whole life, right? Like basically consuming their whole life. So it's almost like it's like the secular alien version of
Totally. It's like a pop culture, inversion or something. Very, very interesting. Because, like, in a way, Bernadette had her own close encounters.
Exactly.
Right.
But
so we're talking about this movie came out in 1977. This is his first sci-fi movie, actually. And he's known for making quite a lot of them.
In fact, he has like an alien movie coming out soon, I think.
He has it's called Disclosure Day. It's coming out in mid-June, I think June 12th.
I don't actually know if it's about aliens. I just assumed with a name
no,
like
it's definitely about aliens. There's even like alien hands in the like trailer.
I see.
The funny thing is it's not funny, but there's a lot of suspicion that it's like a sequel to Close Encounters.
Okay.
Or at least a spiritual sequel, they have said too.
It's cool because we chose this film before I even realized that film existed, that Disclosure Day existed.
Right. So Paul, you gave us a list of, films you might like to talk about. And it was easy for me to pick that one because it seemed relevant, because this is in the discourse right now. The government is doing these disclosures of what they know about UFOs, or maybe not what they know. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't follow this stuff too closely. So I personally have not been that interested in the whole investigating UFOs and stuff, but I am interested in like the way people get fascinated with it, and like what is it that people are looking for with this stuff. So I definitely have a bit of a like I don't know if cynical is the right word. I have a certain dismissiveness of the topic. Not that I don't think there's something behind it, but I don't really. Well, anyway, we'll get to that. But it is interesting what people are looking for. And so I saw this movie. I got to see this on the big screen a couple years ago here in New York. That was my first viewing, and it is striking how well it's done, despite the fact that I don't know if I like agree with whatever Spielberg is saying here, but it's never boring, and it's really, I mean, it's classics. It is classic Spielberg all the way. So I'm happy to be talking about it, especially because the only Spielberg we've talked about so far is Schindler's List, which is quite a different thing from the classic 70s, 80s.
Very different.
And honestly, I would like to get into some other of his science fiction films.
I definitely want to do Minority Report on the podcast.
Yeah, and I've never seen Artificial Intelligence, so that
movie is deeply upsetting to me.
Okay, but that seems like a great one to tackle, especially with the latest encyclical and all this stuff.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, maybe we can just give a quick synopsis of the film. So the film follows sort of three main characters. We've got Roy, played by Richard Dreyfuss. He's sort of like a regular blue collar family man who has a close encounter with something, a UFO, something he doesn't understand, and then it kind of becomes obsessed in sort of trying to figure out what it's all about. We have this character Jillian. She's a single mom, played by
Melinda Dillon.
Yeah, right.
Melinda Dillon.
She's the mother from Christmas Story.
Which is so funny to me because it's the other movie that I always remember Mashed Potatoes from. So
oh yes, oh my gosh,
weird Christmas Story connection.
That's some epic mashed potatoes in this film.
Yes.
Her 3-year-old son Barry is abducted. And so she also, has her life transformed and tries to get to the bottom of this. And then, strangely, like Francois Truffaut is a French scientist investigating these appearances and stuff.
For those who don't know Truffaut, he's like one of the great French directors, big influence on Spielberg, and I'm sure we'll discuss some of his films.
Big new wave director.
Yeah.
And so what's very cool about the film is that as it builds to this sort of climactic ending, it's just jumping all over the place with these different characters. And like right off the bat, it's exciting. Like the first opening sequence out in the desert in Mexico or whatever is just so awesome. I lack the sort of filmographic lexicon to be able to explain exactly what Spielberg is doing here and why it's so great. But just the way the camera is panning and things are being framed and objects are coming in and out of, cloud storms and, lines are being shouted this way and that. It's just so exciting, and it just conveys such a sense of, yes, urgency and confusion. And there's this whole bit with languages, being translated from English to Spanish or Spanish to French or whatever. Right. This sense of disorientation that really stays with you for a lot of the film, if not the whole film. Yeah. There is kind of like a tonal shift about halfway through, but certainly for the first half of the film, it's like everybody is disoriented and confused, and forces are mobilizing, and things are happening. And so it's a very exciting film.
It's also cool to see Bob Balaban with a beard.
So Bob Balaban is always, I don't know, something about his presence on screen is always makes me chuckle. It's not necessarily that what he's doing is funny, but for some reason he always makes me chuckle.
Totally.
Yeah. But
so it's very apparent here, Spielberg as master craftsman, master storyteller. This is a blockbuster film, but it's executed with like a master's hand. And that's apparent from the very first moments of the film.
Well, I was going to say I think there's like two levels, because Thomas, you're kind of talking about, you kind of introduced what are a lot of my issues with the film. I love this film, but I don't necessarily agree with a lot of what it's saying. But as a cinematic experience, what James is talking about, it's incredible, because even, like James, that opening scene, I mean, I feel like Steven Spielberg must have popularized the sort of talking over each other, like dynamic of like, I have no idea what anyone's saying because I can't focus. But that's kind of the point. Like, that's the feeling he's trying to convey. And he does it later in E.T., and it's funnier with like the kids fighting over each other and like hearing them curse at each other or whatever. And that's a little bit more playful. But with this, it's like, I don't know what these ground control people are talking about really at all, but you can tell how intense it is. And that's the point, is the feeling it gets across more than exactly what they're saying.
Right.
I wonder
it's a different kind of information that's being conveyed.
I wonder if he got that from, I think Altman is well known for having done that. And if you watch like McCabe and Mrs. Miller, there's a lot of that. But but in this, maybe one of the Spielberg differences is like Spielberg has this sardonic wit in a lot of his movies, and if you actually listen to what they're saying, there's usually something funny that somebody's saying. Like, for instance, towards the end when they're playing the music on the synthesizer to communicate with the spacecraft, you hear one of these guys saying, "It's not Merle Haggard, but it was great," or something like that.
And I mean, another standout feature of this film from a cinematic perspective is obviously the visual effects. And so I think it's easy to take them for granted because, we live in the time that we live in. But when you just pause and think, wait, this was 1977 and
Star Wars came out the same year.
Yeah. And these effects really hold up. And some of them are still just as awesome as they were then. One of my favorite sort of practical effects moments is when Roy is stopped at the train track and has his like sort of first direct encounter with a UFO, and everything in the car begins to like lift and go flying, and he's coming up and the camera's kind of, and it's you really have this sense of like, I don't know what's happening. Are we being abducted right now? Right. Is this truck being lifted off the ground? Are we going to outer space? But there's just so many excellent examples of visual effects. And then, of course, obviously, John Williams' score. So the score is great. So it's just like
same year as Star Wars. Also, he got nominated for both, I think, and won it for Close Encounters.
Right. So it's just like this perfect, cinematic alchemy of elements that just make for a really enjoyable film to watch.
Yeah, it's interesting because you say alchemy is the right word for it, because if you the Close Encounters theme is very famous and well known, right? But what's interesting about it to me is they don't actually play the full theme as part of the score until the climax of the film. Throughout, it's like that you hear them humming it, I think, in India, or singing it in India.
Yeah.
You hear them playing it, and it's kind of like a plot point throughout. But if you listen to the actual music playing through the film, I don't believe the full theme plays until they've had that experience at the end with the mothership playing it back to them, and it fully like the like that whole thing doesn't come into play until the very and to me, the music has its own narrative in that way, because it uses what is the most famous theme as part of the plot, and it climaxes at the end with the fully kind of orchestrated theme, in a way that, like, I don't like Star Wars as an example. Darth Vader's theme is given up, like, it's right up front. The Star Wars theme is right at the beginning of the film. A lot of thematic movies with themes like that in the music use them as like identifiers for different characters or different moments in the film.
Right.
And I think it's interesting that Close Encounters has this, like, the music has its own narrative that climaxes at the end with that interaction.
That's cool.
I don't know if you guys notice the same thing or if I'm just crazy, but
totally.
that, like,
no, and it mirrors the experience with these extraterrestrials. You know, they're kind of coming through in these sort of obscure or subtle or not so subtle experiences, but it's not until the end when they're really made manifest,
right. Thomas, you're the resident musician, though. I'd love to hear what you.
Oh, well, I mean, the fact that the movie ends with like a massive jam session is like not at all what I would have ever expected, and it's so tremendously playful for him to do that, and it's funny. I mean, it's also really funny to me that the spaceship is making human orchestral, like, brass sounds. It's really I love seeing the synthesizer. I looked up what that's an ARP 2500, I think, is a very important synthesizer, early synthesizer. It's and you're right, it serves a sort of thematic purpose and indicating these kinds of, like, this obsessive quality that the characters are having, especially Roy and others, that they're getting these little fragments. Like, he doesn't ever hear that sound. Like, he doesn't hear that melody. He doesn't hear the spaceship play, the UFOs play it as they go over the highway, early in the film. It's just in his head. Yeah. He gets this sound and these images of what turns out to be this Devil's Tower monument in Wyoming. But it's like he doesn't even know, where is this coming from? And so it sort of makes sense that you don't get it in its full context until the end, because it's like a treasure map, it's like something to keep him obsessed, and this is how you can, I guess it's saying this is how you can communicate with us, something like that, because the image of the Devil's Tower is obviously to lead people to where they want them to go, but it's almost like I don't know, it's like a test. I think my impression of what it is the aliens are giving this as sort of like a test to humanity, like, can you repeat this back to us, and if so, you're, like, ready to communicate with us, something like that. Do you think that's right?
Yeah, I think from a plot standpoint, I think that's what we're led to believe, is that it's a way to communicate that they're putting out there, in the same way that, like, we sent out that, like, gold record right into with a bunch of different, like, information and music and all that stuff on it. It's the same kind of thing of, like, we'll put out this tone, and if they can repeat it back to us, maybe there's a way that we can communicate with each other. Sorry, I'm stuck on now the idea that's not the only movie that Richard Dreyfuss is in where he communicates with music and lights. So it's like,
what's the other one?
The other one is Mr. Holland's Opus. I don't know if you've seen that one, but he has a deaf son in that, and that's the like central relationship. But he is a conductor, and like a high school music teacher, I believe. So anyway, it's worth a watch. It's a pretty good one.
Man.
He's great.
Yeah, I know.
He's great. The performances are great in this film. And his in particular, I think is a standout.
Yeah.
But this film is also significant, I think, because it's not the first Alien film, by a long shot. This is a theme in Hollywood for a long time. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Twilight Zone. It's a big part of American popular culture and consciousness going back to the 1940s and 50s. And it has been since. But I think that Close Encounters strikes me, now I'm no film historian, but it sort of strikes me as like a kind of apex for the genre, because it sort of most fully articulates, I think, the things that motivate this fascination with UFO films and alien stories.
Right.
There's something that's kind of genre like defining and essentializing about this.
If it's a movie about an alien invasion, then like you don't have to ask that question, because the problem is like the problem of aliens is forced upon you.
Yeah,
this is a movie about people being invited to seek something out.
Right. And so it's literally called Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which I guess is taken from some science fiction writer or astronomer.
It's like a UFO. I think it's a nonfiction book that by some UFO guy, and it describes
like categorizes the different.
Yeah. So third kind is where you have you actually see, like physically see an alien, as opposed to just seeing a craft or something like that.
And then I think there's now fourth and fifth kinds, I believe, as well, past that.
One of them is actual communication, I think. Mm-hmm. One of the higher ones.
But yeah, so it's sort of very fundamental, and so it also sort of speaks to some of these kind of existential or perhaps even spiritual, transcendent questions that underlie the fascination with with aliens, with the extraterrestrial. But one, and I think you can see its influence pretty clearly. Like, I thought a lot about other films that I've seen that I grew up with. Signs is a big one that seems to be super influenced by this. Even more recently, Arrival seems very obviously to be influenced by this. So it's made its mark.
Yeah. I've been rewatching the X-Files. You can see even the opening desert sequence. There's so many scenes like that in the X-Files where it's like something happens in some obscure Mexican village or something. And,
so even though this film doesn't, kick start the fascination, I would sort of go out there and saying that in some ways it kind of like cemented or solidified or gave shape to our sort of language for imagining these things.
Yeah. Maybe that and like 2001.
Yeah, well,
which was a decade before.
I was thinking a lot about 2001 as I watched this film. But one of the things that makes it unique too, I think, is that it has such a optimistic or positive kind of orientation toward these aliens. There's like a definite, like it's inflected a definitely like hope-filled inflection at the end of the film, but also throughout, even from the beginning when we see, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the first character to encounter one of the aliens, to have one of these close encounters of the third kind, is Barry, the 3-year-old.
Right.
And he's not terrified. He doesn't run away. He's not hurt. He's actually like attracted. He smiles and he runs outside to kind of chase it and play with it, I suppose. And his mother has to like go out looking for him. And so sort of,
which also makes it scarier from like an audience perspective.
For sure.
It's like freakier that he is attracted to it.
As a kid, that scared me even more. Especially the way they play the actual abduction scene is just like that's like a horror film.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like there's still like it's very very thrilling, and that that tension and that fear is still there. But from the beginning to the end, there is this through line of, we don't have to be threatened by these things.
Right.
And so I find that curious, because that doesn't seem to always be front and center with these types of films.
Well, I was going to say, I actually think Close Encounters might be is at least credited with. I would credit with perhaps popularizing the sci-fi idea of sort of friendly, benevolent aliens.
I see.
At least cinematically speaking, there was maybe a couple like B films where that was the case, but they were still about like invasion, not about like sort of or like in 2001, the aliens just don't like care, right? Like.
Or it's something that's like they're kind of like too kind of transcendent to be understood.
Yeah. And so the fact that it's like the aliens are just as curious about us as we are about them, and there's this like sort of benevolence of just like, let's like share and learn, and yes, it's scary because it's unknown, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the unknown is bad. Is fascinating, and I think is perhaps maybe the key idea of the whole film of like, yes, the unknown is scary, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. That's right. My takeaway, at least. And that's maybe why I love the film, despite I will say one of the things I absolutely hate about this movie specifically, that I usually just like, as soon as it happens, I dislodge it from my brain and I put it away, is when he kisses
I know.
Oh yeah.
It's so weird.
Jillian. I'm like, you have kids that you love, a wife that you clearly care about. This doesn't make any sense.
Well, if that's a problem, then it's even then what he actually does after that is even a bigger problem.
Exactly. Yeah. So right. So those are things that I'm like, this is amazing, this is incredible, I want him to experience. And then I'm like, the movie's like over at that point. So I'm kind of like, yeah, he goes on a flight, he comes back and goes home. He's satisfied.
Spielberg said years later that if he had had kids when he made that movie, he wouldn't have had Roy leave behind his family.
Well, and that's the thing, is that, okay, so, spoiler alert, at the end of the film, Roy ends up leaving on the mothership, ostensibly for a long journey, because these people that are returning are people that were either abducted or given in a similar exchange, I don't know, at like 20, 30 years earlier. So,
right.
So this is... it's not clear at all that he's going on like a 2-week business trip and he's going to come back to his family at the end of it,
No, I would say the implication is quite the opposite, which is probably, I think, my biggest, like, and I think a lot of people's biggest like qualm with the film is his characterization, is because even though Richard Dreyfuss gives an excellent performance and is obsessed and all these things, his choices don't necessarily match up with the man that you meet in the beginning. I think the idea is like because he's clearly a good dad, perhaps a somewhat negligent husband. I mean, he plays with his kids; they like him. I love when he's obsessed and the little kid is walking around like this dad and like throwing the tree through the window and like trying to help. Right. Her dad, but like clearly her dad is breaking down and doing crazy stuff, and the mom's freaking out, but the little kid is still trying to help. Is his choices once the family leaves don't match up with kind of like what we were introduced to, and then him kissing her is, you could sort of explain it away as like, oh, he's just thrilled in the moment, and like it's a New Year's Eve kind of kiss, and it wasn't really. It still doesn't like add up. Even they haven't even earned any kind of romantic relationship between them.
Right. It's okay if you kiss a woman who's not your wife on New Year's Eve, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's not. That's my point. But like, I think some people could try and logic away that like, oh, it's just something they did in the moment because it's such a
Well, that first sort of tonal dissonance comes when they meet at the train station or something, or as people are getting on a train evacuating the area, and they're both running through the crowd, and the camera
and
is moving with
each
them,
other's faces.
and then they come and they it's very romantically charged. It's like two long lost lovers finding each other,
right.
And I think that's an interesting choice because it sort of underlines the intensity of this shared experience that they've both had, and how alone each of them feels. But still, it is kind of,
and that's like the extent where I find it like accessible. I think the movie would be 50 times better, despite the fact that I love this movie, if he didn't kiss her, if they cut that out, and if he didn't go on the ship. Those are the two things that I think would make it better.
If you give the best possible positive spin on this, it's something like, man is motivated by his search for the transcendent, his curiosity about the unknown, and that this can be, a positive, impelling urge to, transcend oneself, to leave behind things that hold one down, and to be, transformed. Okay.
Although it would still need to explain how he is transformed by this,
but
right.
the
He's crazy.
Most
like
cynical,
in the end, like with the move at the end, not the obsession part, obviously.
Right.
The most cynical spin on this is not great dad with kind of complicated home life, leaves behind everything because he got obsessed with aliens.
Right.
My favorite scene in the film, and the one that I actually most remembered after seeing it for the first time, is the dinner mashed potatoes scene, because it's like the most emotionally real, that he's cracking up. Like, he knows he's really upsetting his family, but he feels like he can't do anything about it. So, just seeing his son, sit there, crying silently as his dad, it's really hard to watch.
And it's an interesting thing, because I don't know if I knew that Steven Spielberg said if he had had kids, he would have changed it. Because I think it's very clearly written by somebody who doesn't.
Yes, I had the same thought. I had the exact same thought.
Because I'm like, yes, this film, I would bet there's a lot. I would bet that this is a really cynical take, but I bet there's a lot of dads who saw this film and were like, yeah, I can leave my family and pursue that thing I was pursuing. Yeah. And that's depressing to think about, because that's not because it is you're supposed to see him as kind of somewhat aimless and not really doing much in his life in the beginning, and then he finds this purpose and this mission to go on by the end, and so it's all about self-fulfillment, when it's but you showed us how much he was hurting everybody around him too, and you want them to feel cool as well, and he's part of that.
I leaned over to Thomas and was like, are we supposed to feel like this is a happy ending?
Right. That's because I think you are, because
clearly
you're supposed to forget about everything that happened in the first half of the movie, and I can't. I'm it's especially actually in the director's cut, because there's the sequence of him in the shower and then fighting with his wife and her yelling at the kids. That wasn't in the theatrical cut.
Oh wow, that's brutal. That sequence is brutal.
So in the theatrical cut, it goes straight from, I think it's maybe it's not in the special edition. Either way, it's not in one of the versions. I've seen all three versions, and it's not in one of them because it was that's the studio's. I think it's the special edition, because then they wanted to add the inside of the spaceship, and the studio was like, that's too intense. We want to take that out and make it a little less intense. So it cuts straight from him yelling outside at the sky to him staring at the model. And you don't get the fight where she's screaming at the kids, which is intense and a lot.
Yeah.
But I want him to return home kind of satisfied in some way and able to be a better dad and husband, but instead he jets off. So I think that's a huge sort of thematic and character arc issue with the film. And I think one of the reasons that so much that in film history, so many people kind of just are whatever, is because of sort of the spectacle and how much everything else works.
Yeah.
But I think it's also probably because culturally this is a kind of weak point for us, that a story of self-fulfillment really is, our story. We like that. Right. And I think that maybe the film is supposed to be giving us permission to feel good about this, because we overhear a phone conversation where it sounds like she's leaving him with the kids. So maybe it's we're supposed to sort of like write them off, like, okay, well, they've rejected him, and so now he's free or something. Yeah. But it doesn't really change that it's a tragic ending, really.
In fairness, it also is like, I think we're supposed to see it as like not just a fulfillment for him, but for humanity. He is a representative of humanity. Now, of course, he's not the first person to go on the ship, obviously.
Yeah.
But
so he's been invited, you know. Right. And I mentioned earlier that about halfway through the film, there seems to be a kind of shift away from the kind of disorientation and frantic activity of the first half to this kind of pilgrimage that he and Jillian go on, where it becomes like a different kind of story. It's no longer primarily about these crazy encounters with aliens and how people are responding to them. Now it's aspirational. It's this ascent up the mountain. They're trying to, you know, break into this area that has been evacuated and cordoned off by the government. And then they're literally going up the holy mountain, you know, the devil's tower, you know, to sort of have this this ecstatic experience, you know, and so it becomes a kind of spiritual quest.
Well, you'll know that the 10 Commandments is playing on TV in a certain scene in the film.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. She's like, the mom's like, that movie's like 4 hours because the kid wants to stay up and watch it.
Yeah, that's right.
That's funny. But yeah, you know, so it's like, this is another thing that the film does, I think, really well, is that it's at once this thrilling, exciting, scary, spectacular, visually magnificent, you know, science fiction film, but then also has these very human, spiritual, emotional longings and journeys, you know, and so the wedding of those elements, I think, is what makes it a successful epic. Right. But it also kind of highlights what is the sort of glaring weakness of the film, and I think it's sort of metaphysical orientation is, you know, it leaves much to be desired.
When you say spiritual longings, it's like, is there anything inherently spiritual about like aliens?
No,
just another. But I think they are a stand-in for many people for that, for God, or at least like angels or something. Which is why it's interesting. I didn't expect at the end. I forgot that they have like the prayer service sending them off. So God is sort of acknowledged as like being a thing, at least.
Yeah. Well, it's because, Thomas, you brought up like in the beginning kind of like not really caring too much about like in the real world, not necessarily in this movie, about aliens. And I'm very much the same. I like watching the X-Files. I enjoy a good alien movie. But as far as anything having to do with like the official records about aliens, I'm like, listen, that's none of my business. Like, you guys deal with that. There's people assigned to deal with that. I don't need to worry about it. They'll let me know if I really need to like figure something out. And even if they don't,
for me, it's not so much that I trust the government, but that
no. I didn't say I trust the government.
I trust them so much that I like don't care what they say almost.
Exactly. Well, that's kind of what I mean. Is like, I don't trust the government. I don't care what they're saying about UFOs. It's not my business. It also doesn't really affect my own
and I think
sort
that's
of faith journey. Like it doesn't. I have so much to work on with myself to try and raise, you know, a family, to try and affect the people around me. I can't be worrying too much about whether or not there's aliens and how that necessarily affects like that's what I would expect, that there's somebody within the Vatican who's assigned to decide what that means theologically. And when they decide it, I'll read through it and be like, oh, that's interesting. And then I'll move on with my day. But what I do think this movie does is it taps into, like you said, it's not like there's nothing necessarily spiritually inherent about aliens, but that's, I actually think, what drives the whole plot in a way, is that there isn't, this guy doesn't have too much grounding in his life. Mm-hmm. And so locking onto this sort of event, this obsession, it's like a stand-in for a conversion moment or like an epiphany moment, right? This close encounter. Then he becomes obsessed with aliens. And there's the whole like, oh, well, they're sending signals and putting images in his head and all that. But I still think all of that is kind of like a non, you know, particularly religious person trying to tap into what is oftentimes so like what we find in our faith and in our spirituality is that fulfillment of like of something more, of all of it meaning something, of our
Yeah.
pain, of our suffering, of our strifes, of our blessings, all of that meaning something and being geared towards something higher and greater. And hopefully steering us not to abandon our family and our children.
and what's the thing people say about this? Like, we want to find out, like, if whether or not we're alone in the universe. You know, that's like a common phrase. And it's like, I really cannot say that I feel alone in that sense, you know?
Exactly.
Like, I not only, you know, is there plenty of people for me to interact with right here on Earth? But you know, I don't feel alone in the cosmic sense either. Like, I know there's God, there's the angels and saints, there's, you know, malevolent entities. Like, everything is there for me already to understand. And so, like, that's why, like, when people are talking about UFOs, like, that's why, you know, the thesis that I think our vice president floated and many other people say is like, yeah, they're probably just demons, you know? So that could be true, or it could be just government military stuff. That's also fairly likely, you know, or some people think it's both, and that the government is working with demons to get new technology, you know? So maybe that's the case, but I also don't care, because like, I've got exorcists, you know, like,
well, but it's like, yeah, it's kind of like, all right, yeah, I'll address that if it becomes an issue in my life, but right now it's not.
I've also heard speculation, and there were times when I would go down. This was many years ago when I was a young man, going down conspiracy rabbit holes and learning about UFOs and stuff, and the speculation that this is actually a psyop from the government to distract people away from the things that are actually within their control toward things that they can have no control over whatsoever. And so I think that actually is one of the dark sides to our fascination, our human fascination with extraterrestrials and UFOs, is like, and you see it in Roy. He has these kind of intractable problems in his life with his family, you know, his wife and his children, with his job. And rather than do anything about them, the things that he can do something about, he's drawn to obsess over this thing that promises a kind of fulfillment, but is really outside of his control. And I think that's what UFOs that's the kind of void that UFOs end up filling for a lot of people, is there's a fascination because it takes us away from thinking about those very difficult, challenging things that exist in the world that we are responsible for, toward things that, you know, are really, really outside of, we can't, they're totally beyond, you know?
It's an interesting thing too, because I think it's like there's like a difference between obsession and radicalization versus like our faith points us back to the things on earth that we can't control and that we're responsible for, right? Like that's some of the ultimate purpose of our faith, is to help guide us in what we can handle and what we're not what we can handle, but what we're responsible for, right?
Yeah.
From a personal standpoint,
what we're called to.
Right, what we're called to. Thank you. And the versus the sort of becoming obsessed and sort of like radicalized about a bunch of things that are way out of our control, rather than, you know, focusing on what we can. I mean, that's like the 12-step prayer, right? The God grant me the serenity to accept things. Yeah. So I don't know. I think all of it. This is why I think I told you in my email, James. I was like, listen, I can make any film about spirituality and our Catholic faith, because that's how I watch movies. Always is like, whoever wrote this is trying to get at something, especially if it's a good, well-made story. Even if I don't agree with what the theme is, they're trying to get at something that is like inherently human. Usually, that's usually why it connects with people. And so even if I don't agree with what they're saying, I'm trying to look at it like, what is the desire that they're trying to tap into? What is the thing that the writer or the filmmaker is trying to tap into that's resonating with people? To see then like how is it being answered by them, and how in reality is it answered by us and by God, right? Like, what's the reality versus what somebody is actually saying the reality is, but also like what the experience doesn't necessarily, it doesn't mean that their desire is wrong. It's just like, what is the outcome of it, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and
That's
and
kind
I
of what
think
I'm
you can
trying
also
to examine.
look at this as a a story about someone who's motivated by a calling to greatness, like and that's certainly relatable, and how they're misunderstood by everyone around them, and they have to sacrifice things that others would cling to. So again, like there is like a positive spin that can be put on this, but when you look at it, clear-eyed, it's like,
well,
oh,
yeah,
no.
again, because it's like this climactic, like great thing, and the music's swelling, and he's sailing away from his family, and you're getting all these beautiful VFX shots of the ship, and you're like, wait a second,
your children, children.
In the first half of the movie, where he's largely or with and around his family while he's trying to figure this stuff out, do you think that he is motivated by like a positive search at that point, or it almost seems like the focus is on the how upsetting it is to have these things that you don't understand in your head? Like it's almost like to resolve the tension as much as it is, because like I don't know I guess he's seen the UFOs at that point already, so there's probably some like excitement about it, but it almost feels more like a torment for much of it,
right,
a torment that he's trying to rid himself of, than a positive search. I mean, there's probably elements of both, but it's sort of interesting. That's part of the big tonal shift, obviously, as you said.
Yeah.
That like it's not just that he's upsetting his family, but he's actually like he's
suffering.
He's suffering.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe the suffering is more because of his feeling like he can't communicate what he's experiencing to them than like the experience itself, though.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like mixed up. I think it's clearly supposed to be like even for like an artist journey kind of like simile or metaphor or whatever,
right.
Where it's like, oh, I'm so compelled to make this thing that nothing else matters, and it doesn't matter how upsetting it is to everybody else or how painful it is to everybody else. It's so tough because it's like mixed in with like the alien stuff of like, are they putting those images in his head? Are they like feeding him? Are they making him crazy? Are the aliens making him crazy? Which I think the film is leaving that ambiguous, and then makes it kind of like, well, you could say he just the aliens made him do it, kind of thing, which kind of excuses it. I think it all would have been resolved if he had just been like more of a like fun uncle, who like didn't really have any like direction in his life or anything, but was like living with his brother and like his kids, and was clearly like great to be around, but was like, dude, you're a bum, you're not doing anything. And then,
but I don't think it would hit as hard as the scenes with his family, do, because he's the father,
right? Because it's his dad. But
that's a lot of the dramatic interest of the movie to me, is like
that's true.
How it's affecting his family.
Yeah, but it drops that then, right? It completely drops that thread by them just driving away, and that's sad. But then we're led to believe like, oh, it's okay because he gets to go on the spaceship.
Yeah, exactly. And it's amazing how the last like 35 minutes of the film are this they're on top of the mountain by that point, and they're in this whole UFO sequence. It's really takes its time with it in a way similar to, but less like tedious than the ending of 2001, A Space Odyssey. And I have to mention, this is pretty cool. The visual effects supervisor, Douglas Trumbull, also made scenes for 2001, made for the first Star Trek movie, for Blade Runner, and for the Tree of Life. He worked on the cosmic sequences of the Tree of Life. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, that's right.
So it's a very cool connection. And I suppose you have to say the Tree of Life also probably has a 2001 connection as well in that respect. Just that really long sequence. The mothership was also designed by Ralph McQuarrie, who had just finished working on Star Wars.
Cool.
There's apparently little, I've never spotted it in the film, but there's apparently a little R2-D2 and a TIE fighter on the ship.
Yeah, so, right. They put them on as part of the ship.
That's cute.
Yeah.
But that's the visual effects are really. It's funny because I watched this. We own a digital copy of all three versions, and we watched it on our TV, which is a 50-inch TV at home, decent sound system. But I was like watching and I was like, this is better on a VHS or DVD or a 35 millimeter print, partially because that's even in the way it's a beautiful film, but you can tell by the way it's shot with all the backlit lighting coming out, especially on the aliens, and all the lighting of the thing, that it's kind of leaning into the fact that it knows that film grain and film prints are imperfect.
Yes.
So when you watch a restored version of it and you get to see all the visual effects in such clarity, you're like, this is definitely made in 1977.
Yeah.
But
yeah. No, 100%. 100%. I've had this experience with other films like this from this period, particularly science fiction, but anything with, honestly, even as recently as the Lord of the Rings films, you watch them in 4K now and they actually look worse than they did at the time because the special effects aren't as sort of uniform or sort of blended into the composition. They stick out more jarringly. And so I think that, if you can see a 35 millimeter print of Close Encounters, that's probably the best way to see it,
Yeah.
I might have seen it that way in the theater, actually.
Yeah, it's usually a big thing when they do the 35 millimeter prints, but the Jamie, my wife, saw it they play it at the Campground of America at Devil's Tower every night. And that was the first time she saw it when she was like 9 or 10. And she said it was terrifying because it's like right there.
Wow.
Like Devil's Tower is right there and you're watching the movie
that sounds like such a cool family vacation.
Yeah, no.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, there's a lot of technical reasons for that stuff, like like about the black levels and everything in VFX, especially computer generated VFX versus but even like the mats and stuff that they would have used for Close Encounters or for Star Wars, about the blacks appearing, like when you print them onto a film, everything kind of gets blended together in a way that when it's transferred digitally, things start to separate in a way. And and then it can even come down to like the TV you're using. If you're not using like an OLED TV that has like true blacks, then the actual blacks, like some of the blacks are backlit and some of them aren't, depending. So anyway, there's a whole like technical reason for why special effects show up differently and look different depending on whether it's projected or on your TV or whatever. And I think a lot of people write old movies off because of that stuff, but I'm like, no, just like, I don't know, suspend your disbelief.
Sure. Yeah, or just find a better way of watching it,
Exactly,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. Was there anything else we wanted to touch on with this film?
I don't think so. I'm happy to say I don't think so. Guys, seriously, I love talking about literally any movie, so I would love to come back and talk.
That's
again,
fun.
Maybe about Minority Report, because I also love that movie, and that brings up a lot of ethical and sort of spiritual questions as well.
That's definitely a movie we want to talk about.
Couple fun facts. Spielberg liked to tell people that he was born in 1947, even though an investigation by the Los Angeles Times showed that he was actually born in December 1946. And he said the reason he liked to say 1947 is because it was the same year as the first major UFO sighting and the Roswell crash, because he had a lifelong obsession with fascination, I should say, with UFOs, which sort of makes sense given at least 4 films counting this new one. Are there any more that he's made on the topic? Second fun fact, Paul Schrader, who you may know from co-writing Taxi Driver and other movies with Scorsese, and also First Reformed more recently, he was the first screenwriter for the film, and Spielberg called the script he turned in, quote, one of the most embarrassing screenplays ever professionally turned into a major film studio or director, and, quote, a terribly guilt-ridden story not about UFOs at all.
Wow.
That's
crazy.
They had that rewritten. Yes. That's the other fun fact.
Okay. Yeah, there were like 5 or 6 writers on the film, but Spielberg's the only one credited as the writer.
Yeah, I saw that on the Wikipedia page that like a lot of people were involved in contributing to the screenplay in various capacities.
Yeah.
I I'm just looking at this little tablet here. Do you have any other fun facts for us?
You never appreciate my fun facts. Okay, well, I have to end with
I'm appreciating them, Thomas.
I have to end with the grumpy anti going to space quote that I always use from Tarkovsky's film Solaris from the professor Dr. Snout. Science nonsense. In this situation, mediocrity and genius are equally useless. I must tell you that we really have no desire to conquer any cosmos. We want to extend the Earth up to its borders. We don't know what to do with other worlds. We don't need other worlds. We need a mirror. We struggle to make contact, but will never achieve it. We are in a ridiculous predicament of man pursuing a goal that he fears and that he really does not need. Man needs man.
This is what Thomas tells me every time I'm excited about a space launch. We don't need other worlds.
A mirror.
We need a mirror.
Perfect.
Well, anyway, cool. Well, thanks so much, Paul, for joining us. Thanks, listeners, for sticking around this long. Go over to catholicculture.org and check us out. We're trying to raise some money right now, so if you appreciate this podcast or any of the other work that we're doing, we would so appreciate your generosity in supporting that work. You can go to catholicculture.org/donate. And yeah, I guess we'll have to see this disclosure day and decide what we think. I wonder if in the interim, Spielberg's gotten a little less optimistic about aliens. Yeah, I guess we'll see.
We'll see.
Well, War of the Worlds, I suppose, probably wasn't optimistic. I haven't seen it, but
I was a better dad.
Yeah,
Tom Cruise was a better dad than Richard Dreyfuss.
Good.
So yeah.
All right.
All right, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Yep.
Criteria is a production of CatholicCulture.org. Check out our other podcasts, including church history podcasts Way of the Fathers and Lives of the Popes, Catholic Culture audiobooks, and our long-form interview show, the Catholic Culture Podcast. You'll find all of this, as well as Catholic news, commentary, liturgical year resources, and more at CatholicCulture.org.